Good morning, dear Dharma friends. Am I audible? Speaking of which, my book, Mindfulness for a Happy Life, is available on Audible. And let me tell you, when I hear, Jennifer gave me Barack Obama's book for Christmas, and on Audible, and it's 23 hours, I think, or 25 hours, maybe more. I have even greater respect for that guy because mine is 6.5 hours, and it took 20 hours in the studio to do. So anytime you're listening to a well-recorded book, someone worked hard to make it happen. So here we are. It is the 23rd of May, 2021. I am Robert Beatty. I'm coming to you from Portland, Oregon. This is a broadcast of the Portland Insight Meditation Community. Actually, that makes me think I'd like to do this. Haven't done this in a long time. There we go. About who we are. Who we are, PIMC. Based in Portland, Oregon, the Portland Insight Meditation Community is an experiment in American Buddhism. We welcome people of all faiths, orientations, genders, abilities, ages, and racial cultural backgrounds. Darn, I wanted to record this. Let me start again. Record this.
Recording in progress.
Goodness, she announced the recording in progress. So, Portland Insight Meditation Community, from our website, who we are. Based in Portland, Oregon, the Portland Insight Meditation Community is an experiment in American Buddhism. We welcome people of all faiths, orientations, genders, abilities, ages, and racial cultural backgrounds. The purpose of PIMC is to improve the lives of participants, their families, and the greater community through meditative practice and a lifestyle that supports liberation from suffering, the awakening of wisdom, and the manifestation of compassion. Rooted in the essential teachings of the Buddha, we are dedicated to awakening beyond the ritualism, sexism, hierarchy, and other cultural artifacts that have characterized traditional religion. We value diversity and welcome anyone who is interested in investigating the inner life. And it goes on from there. The last paragraph, we acknowledge that the earth and its resources are finite and that our lives are inseparably interwoven with those of all other beings. We seek to understand our lives in the context of the web of life in which we coexist and to live respectfully and responsibly with all beings. So, my journey to here, of course, I've started with birth, of course, but I encountered the Dharma in India in 1971, and I was pretty desperate. And I discovered that I'd always had the notion that I believed that my generation was going to end poverty and racism and war, and it was a lovely idealistic dream. But slowly, well, in a few quantum leaps, but it's become clear to me that where the war ends is inside. And unless I can end the war inside, I continue to do damage in the world, despite my best intentions. So we come together for this practice, this mysterious, wonderful practice of insight meditation. And my Dharma talk today is going to be on the meaning of that word insight. What does vipassana mean, really? And why am I meditating? And I have a poem.
Hey, Robert. It's Tamara. May I interrupt for a moment?
I think you are.
Hi. Sorry. You just have a window up that's on the screen that this meeting is being recorded. Continue or leave meeting. It's in the middle of the screen. I just didn't know if you knew that.
No, that's weird.
Yeah, it was when you hit record, it popped up and it's still there in the middle of the screen.
Oh, I think I'll just...
Tamara, you just have to click on continue. Tamara, that comes up on everyone's. You just have to click up continue.
Got it.
That's for you.
Thank you. Thank you, my dear.
Okay. And in that regard, when you're sharing, if you ever want what you're sharing to not be recorded, just say, please turn off the recording. Not so relevant in this gathering, but in my classes, that's true. Okay. Thanks for the tech support there, Heather. That was cool. There once walked the earth, this is not the poem, there once walked the earth a giant of a human being, William Stafford. He lived here in Portland, and he was an ordinary man who wrote a poem a day. I had the privilege of being in the same room with him a few times and was very touched by the power that came through him and his amazing gentleness. So here's the poem. If you don't know the kind of person I am, and I don't know the kind of person you are, a pattern that others made may prevail in the world, and following the wrong God home we may miss our star. For there is many a small betrayal in the mind, a shrug that lets the fragile sequence break, sending with shouts the horrible effects of childhood, storming out to play through the broken dike. Now that's a line, isn't it? Sending with shouts the horrible effects of childhood, storming out to play through the broken dike. And as elephants parade, holding each elephant's tail, but if one wanders, the circus won't find the park. I call it cruel, and maybe the root of all cruelty, to know what occurs, but not recognize the fact. And so I appeal to a voice, to something shadowy, a remote, important region in all who talk. Though we could fool each other, we should consider, lest the parade of our mutual life get lost in the dark. For it is important that awake people be awake. For a breaking line may discourage them back to sleep. The signals we give, yes or no, or maybe, should be clear. The darkness around us is deep. If you don't know the kind of person I am, and I don't know the kind of person you are, a pattern that others made may prevail in the world, and following the wrong God home, we may miss our star. For there is many a small betrayal in the mind, a shrug that lets the fragile sequence break, sending with shouts the horrible effects of childhood, storming out to play through the broken dike. And as elephants parade holding each elephant's tail, but if one wanders, the circus won't find the park. I call it cruel. Maybe the root of all cruelty, to know what occurs but not recognize the fact. And so I appeal to a voice, to something shadowy, a remote important region in all who talk. Though we could fool each other, we should consider lest the parade of our mutual life get lost in the dark. For it is important that awake people be awake, for a breaking line may discourage them back to sleep. The signals we give, yes or no, or maybe, should be clear. The darkness around us is deep. We are pilgrims, followers in the footsteps of many generations. Just think about that. Many generations. Over 120, depending on how you count a generation, since the Buddha walked the earth. And something I always like to say, and I think to be true about the Buddha, is that he was an ordinary human being, just like us. He got born and he died and he got confused and he struggled, but he was really called. He had a mission. He had a calling. He wanted to wake up. He wanted to find freedom and happiness. And so his great success, and then his devotion, 42 years he taught, or so, 40-something. That's a long time. But something lit him up. And his heartfelt longing for the rest of his life was to help other people have that same experience. And he couldn't make it happen for us, as nobody can. It's really up to us. And so we have this little song, this little way of reminding ourselves of the refuge in the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. I encourage you to sing if you want. Just listen, hear it as hearing. I take refuge in the Buddha, the one who shows me the way in this life. Namo Buddhaya, Namo Buddhaya, Namo Buddhaya. I take refuge in the Dharma, the way of understanding and love. Namo Dharmaya, Namo Dharmaya, Namo Dharmaya. I take refuge in the Sangha, the community of mindful harmony. Namo Sanghaya, Namo Sanghaya, Namo Sanghaya. Let us do the quintessential practice, symbolized by all those Buddha statues. Here we are at the foot of the Bodhi tree. We have come to this moment in our lives when it's time. It's time to stop putting off really being alive. Try to live in the present moment, said the Buddha. I remember for decades I used to hear teachers say things like, the past is over, the future doesn't exist yet, all that ever exists is now. They're interesting words, aren't they? There's only now. But ever so mysteriously, it gradually becomes clear to see it and recognize the fact that there really is only now. And so much of our practice is about recognizing the ways in which a self is created by memory, by plan, by hope, by fear, by remorse. And sometimes we stumble into the eternal now. And in the now, there's no one even to notice, because there's just now. But we have many strategies, very powerful strategies. Among them, central is mindfulness of in-breathing and out-breathing. So please, notice the reality of in-breathing and out-breathing, the sensations in the body. We often have a tendency to meditate to get somewhere. I'm going to improve myself. I'm going to get more concentrated. I'm going to finally get rid of these anxious thoughts. The common denominator of all of these is the word I. In the present moment, what do you really have? We have the sense doors of seeing, hearing, sitting, touching. Tasting, smelling, and everything that happens at the mind door. Please let's come home to the actual contact of mind and matter in the sensations of in-breathing and out-breathing. Each and every breath has a beginning. And it's encouraged. We are encouraged to be present with the entirety of breathing in and the entirety of breathing out. Of course, there's more to the human experience than just the body. There's the mind and all its objects. There are thoughts, memories, plans, moods, obsessions, tranquility. All the emotions. These various productions of mind are not enemies any more than rain squalls are enemies, or the seasons, or falling leaves. This is the meditation of life, which includes everything. So with great delicacy and gentleness, we stay when we can with the sensations of breathing. And also open, noticing, aware of any thoughts that think themselves into existence, or any mood which is dominant or fleeting, for that matter. Well, we cannot observe awareness itself. We can notice the arising and passing away of its objects. And the mystery of consciousness that most people never pay any attention to at all. It's a kind of so what conversation. There's the breath, and there's knowing the breath. The breathing, the sensations. There are thoughts, and there's knowing the thoughts. And they co-arise, they coexist. And what about when discomfort arises? Or when that chronic pain becomes apparent again? What about when the broken heart, the loneliness, the fear, the anger, the judgmentalism, the self-hatred? What about when they arise? And it's here that the love of insight meditation, the metta, the compassion, the karuna, makes room for everything. I aspire to love and accept myself. Everything that's experienced exactly as it is in this moment. And when I discover that I'm hurting or suffering, when there is hurting or suffering, I aspire to turn toward it. Because hurting and suffering are not mistakes. They are inherent in human birth. And so when there's physical pain, turn toward it, embrace it. Know it for what it is. No one can describe it. It's yours to attend to. When there is confusion or irritation or self-hatred or other hatred, embrace it. This is the human condition. These are objects of awareness. The insights, the deep intuitive understandings that arise in practice can be described in many different ways. Further, it's taught that the practice is intended to test three hypotheses. In a way, to correct three profound perceptual distortions. Can I find something permanent? Is there something permanent? Is it possible to experience lasting satisfaction and contentment through the sense doors? And perhaps the beautiful jewel among them all, can I find a self? Can I find some place to land that won't disappear? This is the direction of vipassana meditation, seeing things as they truly are. remarkable that such extraordinary truth should come through simply paying attention. Paying attention, being aware now, here. I'd like to call to the altar of our hearts and honor my friend Clark Hansen, Jampal Gyatso. We never spent much time together. He's one of the teachers of my generation here in Portland. He founded a center called Dorje up on the ridge. This is his picture in Bhutan. He was one of those people who, whenever I met him, I felt seen and valued. Just the way he would say my name and "It's good to see you," because he meant it. He died last week. I had the opportunity to spend some time with his body. Very potent, as always. So, Clark Clark, who aside from his Buddhist world, when I knew him, we had lunch together a few times way back when, he worked for the Oregon Historical Society and was talking with elderly people, like myself, I suppose, and getting their stories about coming to Oregon and their lives. That was his work. A true historian of a sort. You will find in the chat, if you wish, a link that will take you to a donation page to support this broadcast and PIMC. And it's the practice of dana, this practice of opening up, oh, it's mine, I don't have enough, and moving it into, I have enough and I can share. One of the things that I'm getting to do as I negotiate this tedious project of getting permits from the city and raising the funding for it and so on, is I get to talk about the mission of PIMC. And it's a remarkable thing. Ordinary human beings like us walk through the doors or stumble into the website or stumble onto this. And then for some, lots of people just turn away. What's that? But for some, for those for whom it's a fit, it transforms their life. That's our mission. Transforming human lives. And so very late in her life, Ruth Dennison said that, when I'm on a plane and someone asks me what I do, I say that I'm a teacher of happiness. Teacher of happiness. It's like the Dalai Lama saying, my religion is kindness. So anyway, this is an opportunity to do some support, to become a monthly donor, to make a one-time contribution, and any little bit is important for you. And it helps other people too. In terms of other activities at PIMC, there's something called the Digest. It comes out once a week. Gosh, Gregory and Molly do a wonderful job on that. And you can receive that if you want. And if you want to get on the listserv, all you have to do is go to the website or just email Avi, A-V-I, at portlandinsight.org and ask him to put you on the list. And then you'll get probably a little more mail than you want, but it's quick to delete. So I think that's what I want to say for this morning. I still have Clark's picture over here on my right on my other monitor. Hi, Clark. If it isn't in your practice so far, I encourage you, when you can, when you have a friend die or a family member, or when you have the opportunity to be with someone in life and then in death, it's when you're being given such a gift. I often actually say, someone said this to me once, and I say it to people when they have someone die. I say, or a pet for that matter. I say, your dog is giving you their final gift and blessing. And it may be the greatest gift they'll give you, because they're showing you that they will disappear. So huge, isn't it? Disappear. Wow. So I'm now going to disappear briefly and invite Jim Dalton to come into the forefront and lead some mindful movement. And then when I come back, I'm going to be talking about insight, psychological insights, spiritual insights, and in a way, what we're doing in practice. So, have a lovely movement. See you soon. Jimbo, You're on.
Okay. Thank you very much. I think I'm online, and I'm going to move to standing. Invite you to join me to do some mindful movement. Why do we do mindful movement? The reason I do mindful movement is that I find that I feel better when I'm finished. It loosens up the tightness and the traumatic reaction in my body, in my joints, in my nervous system, to just move like this. Shifting. With no purpose. That feels good. To just drop the idea of being there, just enjoying the journey. And then adding to the journey with a little twist helps me loosen up other joints. Notice which joints are complaining and which ones are enjoying this. Maybe everything is smooth today, or there's a little hitch in your get along. I don't know. Sometimes it's there, sometimes it's not. So if we just stand like this, there's a spot where we can feel the least amount of effort to balance this skeleton. Feel the bones in your feet. Feel the bones in your lower legs, the long bones of the thighs. It's harder to feel unless you move, but if you move a little bit and twist, you can feel all the joints in the upper legs and hips and lower spine. There's a lot of complexity in there. Just notice what it takes to turn, as if there was an axis up here, just from the crown of your head down between your heels, just turning. What's going on? And then come to stillness for a second and breathe and count your ribs. Not literally, but just feel how making the intention to inflate your lungs will create sensations in those little tiny muscles between your ribs. Your rib cage responds to your intention to breathe fully, breathe deeply, and then to exhale completely. There's a subtle set of muscles that have to relax all together to empty. And then full breath. And then move like this. I'm moving my hands as I'm bending my knees. I'm dropping my hands as I'm straightening my knees. And then I just drop the words and feel. Just notice the sensations. Breathing in as I lift. Breathing out as the hands drop. You can tune into the ribs, or tune into the shoulders, or tune into the knees. You can choose a specific spot, or you can just feel the ensemble, the whole shebang. A body lifting as it sinks. It's doing 2 things at once, at least. 200 things at once. awareness can gather all of the sensations together into this moving body, or what happens at the soles of the feet, at the knee joint, at the shoulder joint, and then come again to stillness. What happens when we turn the chin over to one shoulder and just hold it there? What are the sensations? How do you know if your eyes are closed what direction your chin is pointing? And intending to move, come back to the center and feel the balance, the symmetry between one side and the other, and then turn to the other side and hold it and feel how that feels. Chin extended over towards one shoulder, and then back to the center. Lift one hand across and focus on the palm, and then open the other palm towards the earth and move like this. What do you notice? Sensations, feelings, thoughts. There's no easily detected scene between the beginning and the end of a cycle. There's just an ongoing cycle of movement, turning, switching hands, coming back, then drop the words and just feel the flow. One sensation following another. And what's the mood created by slow, round movements? Are there any thoughts? Are there thoughts that are necessary? Can they be just set aside? We don't need you right now. And then stand like this, as if you're hugging a tree, and then drop the idea of the tree and the hug, and stand like this. The words are no longer necessary. Words are for communication. And then a door opens to presence. Presence into this feeling, into this sensation. And then moving again, we'll press with both hands, turn and pull with both hands, and shift the weight, and then drop the words. Can we make this a continuous flow with no seams, round, soft movements, turning this joint and that joint, shifting the weight from here to here to here to here, dropping the words, opening to presence. Not going anywhere, but feeling the journey. Turning, stepping, gliding forward, pulling back. Open to coming to stillness, and then noticing sensations in a still standing form. Scanning again, noticing the bottoms of the feet, the ankles, the space between the tips of the toes and the back of the heels. The space between the ankles and the knees. Nothing still. Really, there's always some adjustment. But relative stillness compared to our gestures, we notice the space between the knees and the hips. It's alive. We can be present for simple life. Life making a living. I ran into that phrase last week. I really love it. Let's open both arms to the side and notice life making a living. Setting down slowly. Opening to the side. One sensation after another, a feeling of openness, a feeling of release. Gathering, present with change. Present with intending to lift, intending to release, intending to move to relative stillness. And bringing our hands together in gratitude. We still are upright and breathing on the right side of the grass, as they say. And we have awareness of hands touching. You can press them together or just barely touch them. Bring both hands to the heart in gratitude for the opportunity to practice. And looking forward to practicing together someday on Duke Street. I hope you can all come at some point. And I'll see you there, I hope. Thank you.
Thank you, dear Jim. Another poem just jumped into consciousness. Thanks for being here. And I might ask the question, not that I'm anticipating you to respond overtly, but to think about it. Why are you here? It's Sunday morning. There's so much you could be doing. Why be here meditating with a group? And I want to come back to that. This is a poem from Rumi, 13th, 12th century Sufi mystic. I had the opportunity, it goes so far, the past, it disappears so quickly. I went with my daughter to Turkey back some years ago. We had an incredible time. We visited Rumi's tomb in Konya. It was one of the purposes for going to Turkey. And it makes these poems even more poignant for me. All day I think about it. And then at night I say it. Where did I come from and what am I supposed to be doing? I have no idea. My soul is from elsewhere, I'm sure of that. And I intend to end up there. This drunkenness began in some other tavern. When I get back around to that place, I'll be completely sober. Meanwhile, I'm like a bird from another continent sitting in this aviary. The day is coming when I fly off, but who is it now in my ear who hears my voice? Who says these words with my mouth? Who looks out with my eyes? What is the soul? What is the essence of my being? I cannot stop asking. If I could taste one small sip of an answer, I could break out of this prison for drunks. I didn't come here of my own accord, and I can't leave that way. Whoever brought me here will have to take me back. This poetry, I never know what I'm going to say. I don't plan it. When I am outside the saying of it, I get very quiet and rarely speak at all. Who says these words with my mouth? Who looks out with these eyes? Satipatthana Vipassana is the name of this practice. It's old, 2,600 years. Something has to have some real oomph to last that long. Sati, mindfulness, remembering. Patthana, staying nearby, gathering. Sati, mindfully staying present. And then the word vipassana. It's one of my very favorite words. My favorite English word is ubiquitous. I like that, ubiquitous. My favorite word in Pali language, the language of the Buddhist scriptures, is papancha, which means mental proliferation. It's that thing that happens when a thought comes in and another thought, and papancha, mental proliferation. But vipassana, it means perceiving reality as it really is, perceiving things as they really are. This is perhaps a bit of a digression, but I want to share my. It's remarkable to me that we all have lots of delusions. I mean, that's just how it is. And I'll speak to some particular ones. But the fact that a significant portion of Americans are committed to being anti-science and anti-observation, that there's a commitment to living a lie, living a fantasy. That's really remarkable. It shows how vulnerable we are as human beings. I got myself in a little bit of hot water recently by saying that any of us can be conditioned to believe anything. And that's not true. There are certain things that I could not be conditioned into believing. However, as a vulnerable human, there are other things, other belief systems that I could be conditioned into believing that are quite unconscious, unquestioned, and full of bias. And what the Buddha taught, and what I believe to be true, he said that until awakening, until one is awake, spiritually awake, given the right circumstances or the wrong circumstances, we can be led far astray. We can take a side. We can believe that our side is right. And we can do heinous things to other people because of the narrow-mindedness of our view, because of the way our mammalian, reptilian structure has us perceive reality. We can forget to love one another. So I want to speak a little bit about insight. You'll often see this meditation, mindfulness meditation, has become a big deal now. And there's a common translation which is insight. So what do we mean by insight? As I was thinking of this talk, I remembered a very dramatic moment in my life. I was in my late 20s. I was very newly married, a few days. And the wedding was in Portland, and my mother came to Portland. My sister came, one of my sisters. And then 3 days later or so, I drove up with my new wife to Vancouver, BC, where my sister lives. And it was a very dramatic moment in that I was beginning to sever something, to wake up to the fact of a really bad codependent relationship with my mother. It was such a relationship that when I was traveling in Australia, I left home. At 21, I signed onto a ship and I went to Australia. But I wrote my mother several 60-page letters from my travels. It was a fusion. My mother was agoraphobic, didn't go outside the house much, and had no friends. And I was tasked. My job was to be her eyes and ears out in the world to make her happy. It's a bad task for all concerned. But anyway, to try to keep a little bit to the point. When I was leaving Vancouver to come back to Portland, it was so hard saying goodbye to my mother. This was pre-email, It was phone calls was what we had. But there was something profoundly symbolic and archetypal happening, that I was leaving with my wife, and I found myself sobbing like a small child, like a baby, really. And this grossed everybody out, of course, around me, including my mother, probably. But then in the car on the way home for hours, my wife and I didn't talk. But it seemed fine to me, because the thoughts that I was having were how I would stay in contact with my mommy. So we got home, and we were getting ready for bed, and a fight started. And it was quickly intense. And it was terrifying. And in a few seconds, I suddenly had a bad migraine, which I'd had for years, off and on. Bad migraine and with nausea. And I found myself in the bathroom with my wife holding me, throwing up violently and screaming, "I hate you." Now that's weird, don't you think? I hate you. Very confusing. And that was the beginning. I quickly got into therapy for the first time in my life. I'd been meditating for at least 5 or 7 years. I was even teaching some, starting to teach. And what emerged over, well, it's still in process. There's subtleties to it. But what emerged was that there was a part of myself that was so suffocated in this relationship with my mother. Not that she meant to do it, right? But that there was so much rage. Oh, I also had bad allergies. My allergies almost went away over the next year or two as I realized how much rage there was in here. That's repression. I didn't know that part of myself existed. The people around me knew that I had angry, but my image of myself was that I was such a nice person, and I was a nice person. I've always cultivated that, but there was this unknown part of myself that was hidden. So, when we meditate, or as life reveals it to us, some of the insights that we get are psychological. And some of us have early childhood trauma to deal with. I had my chart done once by a very famous woman in Chicago. I never met her, but I sent her my birthday, location, and time. And then we met on the phone, and the first thing she said was, "Robert, how old do you think you were when you started taking care of your mother?" And I said, "Well, how about a year?" And she said, No. Think 15 minutes. Hang on, I got to do a little adjustment on my screen here. Well, maybe I should spotlight it. That'd be good. There we go. But get rid of me. I don't want to see me so big. Maybe that's not going to work. How about this? I'm going to do that. If you want to have me spotlighted, you can do that. If you do one of the settings up in the top right. There we go. Good. So, let me go back a step, please. I'm going to put an asterisk there and come back to that spot. One of the reasons people meditate, and it's a big one, and it's a good one, it's part of the spreading of mindfulness meditation really all over the world, and that is for stress management. To stop and sit down and pay attention to your breathing for 15 or 20 minutes or longer, once a day or twice a day, will change your life. you'll learn how to calm down. Because, among other things, many of us have lots of anxiety, and we're creating these fantasies of something bad happening in the future. And the mind can't tell the difference. The body mind can't tell the difference between a fantasy of a future catastrophe and the real thing. So we're always living in fight-flight. And in fight-flight, the sympathetic nervous system is firing in the parasympathetic, which has to do with healing and relaxation and digestion and so on. That never gets a chance to work. Similarly, those of us, and this is pretty universal, who have trauma from the past or who are conditioned, to rehearse and cherish resentments from the past. If we're always reaching into the past, which is an imagination, we're reaching into the past and creating he, she, they did this to me and I'm going to get them and I was a victim, and we can, when we're doing that unconsciously, we never get a chance to relax. We don't sleep well, and we never get to be in the present moment. So simply learning how to sit up straight, come home to the breath, let go of thoughts of the past, let go of thoughts of the future, results in and it's transformative. And the research is absolutely solid on that. John Kabat-Zinn was the fellow who he wrote a great book called Full Catastrophe Living, which incidentally came from Zorba the Greek. The English guy in Zorba the Greek asks Zorba, "Were you ever married, Zorba?" And Zorba says, yeah. Wife, house, kids, the whole catastrophe. which I find very funny. But so anyway, he did something very interesting. He went to the University of Massachusetts Med Center and he went to the heads of the departments and said, I want to try an experiment with mindfulness meditation. Would you please send me the people for whom Western medicine has shot its bolt? Right? And so people were referred from all kinds of different disciplines. And lo and behold, when they did his program, which was 8 weeks, 45 minutes a day, as I remember, 6 days a week of meditation, which is a bunch, and then one weekend, their symptoms and all kinds of syndromes improved. It wasn't a miracle cure, but the stress component of whatever, which is huge, of course, of whatever ailment they had, would reduce remarkably and statistically at the O1 level. And by now, I don't know what it is now. The last time I heard John speak, it was over 100,000 people had gone through their program and been studied. So this is not mere conjecture or suggestion or fantasy. It actually works. If you want to lower your stress and increase the potentials of healing, then meditate. There's nothing more effective. And you get some insights, you get some understanding of what's causing your stress, but it's really very superficial. And then there's another level of application. Remember, I have an asterisk to get back over here. And that's the psychological and emotional. For several years, I worked with I did some teaching with the, what's it called? I'm forgetting here. Portland Dialectical Behavioral Therapy. Created by, what's her name? A woman in Seattle. Basically, bringing mindfulness meditation to people in that particular model. It's people who have a part of their structure is what's called a borderline personality. But part of that is that emotions flare out of control. It's difficult to control the emotions. And when our emotions are out of control, we tend to make a lot of wreckage in our lives. So one of the things that meditation can do, and that was central in that program, was they called it the modulation of emotion. If you want to learn how to, if you have rage issues, if you're still going through your life with road rage, why? Why fill your body full of toxic chemistry? And the why is because you simply haven't been taught. You haven't learned yet that you don't have to do that. It's not a big process to stop having rage all the time. It means learning to notice the source of rage and how you create rage in yourself and how you can shift that rage into love and compassion rather than rage. So there's psychological insights. There's also the insights. Why is it that I lie frequently? Or how is it that I'm stealing? Or how come I feel anxious about every time my partner and I start to become close to being sexual, all of a sudden I'm freaked out? Or why is it that I can't study? Why can't I set goals and move toward what I'd like to achieve in my life? These are psychological understandings, and it's quite possible, it's the realm of psychotherapy and meditation, to illuminate these. Oh, right, every time I would try to study, I'd hear my parents fighting downstairs, so when I try to study, I'm frightened. Or, well, in my case, one of the big ones was really addressing depression, because I suffered from really a lot of depression. And just a plug for chemistry, I took SSRIs, antidepressants, for 10 years with great effect. They were very helpful for me. They don't help everybody, but they lowered the level of enough for me that I could actually do the therapeutic and meditative work of realizing how that was happening. How was that depression, anxious depression, being generated? So, I've certainly missed whole categories of psychological and emotional insight, but I think you may be getting the gist. How is it that I have these life-limiting behaviors? And meditation, and the help of a good, I always think of therapy in this way. It's the capacity, it's the process of having someone, I think of someone as an elder, but it doesn't have to be someone older than us, but someone who can hold my hand while I turn toward that which I have not been able to feel or know before. That which overwhelmed me as a child, because my poor little ego was fragile as could be, overwhelming. Now, with the greater ego strength that comes from meditation and from some life experience and a hand to hold, and I can turn and look into that and then realize, oh, it's just that. It's just those emotions. It's just those feelings. That's not who I am. So there are remarkable psychological insights, and insight meditation is useful for helping with that. There's another level of insight, which let me see if I can read this. I think I was very touched by this, reading it earlier today. Okay. It's from the Astavakra Gita, which predates the Buddha by 1,000 years. It's a dialogue between King Janaka and a young sage named Astavakra. The Gita has been revered by hermits, mystics, yogis, sages, and holy men and women throughout the ages. In more recent times, it's been a favorite of Sri Ramakrishna, Vivekananda, and Sai Baba. The following are some passages. You are not a little body existing in this world. No, it is this world which exists in you. You are not the pure mirror on which, you are the pure mirror on which this world appears as an image. Rare indeed, my child, is that blessed person whose desire for life, enjoyment, and learning have been weakened, extinguished by observing the misery of others caught in duality and lost in the maze of worldly existence. Be content with what comes of itself. Look upon friends, lands, wealth, houses, partners, and other marks of good fortune as a dream or a juggler's show lasting but a few moments. Cultivate equanimity toward all things worldly. Become free from care and remain unattached, even though engaged in action, knowing that you are not the doer. Of what benefit is it to use thoughts to think of the infinite, the unthinkable, to realize the absolute, venture beyond all thoughts and become the absolute itself? And it goes on. So what does that mean? Right? What are those mystics? They must all be nuts, right? Or, and here's where the Buddhist teachings are so exquisite, I think. People would come to the Buddha with all kinds of different questions. Does God exist? What about this? What about that? What about the caste system? His reply, are you suffering? Can you get in touch with your suffering? Can you learn how to connect with the fact of your dissatisfaction, your angst? And can you bear it? There's a nice image here. Can you bear that suffering like a wagon bears a load? Right? I'm hurting. I'm suffering. Can I realize that? And I say the following with a little trepidation. That's a good word too, trepidation. Life is really difficult to bear. It's really hard. It's really, really hard. And why? The Buddha said, well, there's a few categorical issues that make it difficult to bear. Birth, sickness, old age, decay, and death. I've still got a light dose of old age, decay compared to friends, actually. I have friends passing away. But constant discomfort. My body's always hurt. I remember way back in my 20s doing yoga, and it's like, geez, this is stiff. Well, it's because they are stiff. And they hurt all the time. Dare we acknowledge that? And then there's that kind of, another favorite word, incohate. I like that word too. This kind of unstructured experience that there's something wrong. Something's wrong. And of course, there is something wrong. There's political strife and economic strife, and there's the planet warming up, and there's racial and inequity and violence, and there's something wrong. And this isn't new. It was true at the time of the Buddha. So, the Buddha suggested this really odd thing, which is stop and pay attention and notice how much dukkha there is, how much dissatisfaction, how, as Ruth Denison put it, the fact that there's always a leak in the canoe. And it's not a mistake. It's not that you did something wrong or your parents did something wrong, or it's not that there's social inequity, though it is all those things. But the fact is, even when those are much improved, there's still this sense inside, there's something wrong. This is the first noble truth. It's called the truth of dukkha. And it's a powerful insight. And I still fight against it. But I remember in my 20s, I didn't want to, even though I was teaching it, I didn't really believe it. And it was helpful to maintain that delusion with drugs and alcohol. Because they can blind, they can make us quite numb. And also to stay welded to certain ideas that when this gets better, then I'll be fine. I was rather pleased with the last election. It didn't make things a lot better for me, though. I think it was a good thing, but then in that, I don't know if there's anybody here in this broadcast that was cheering for the other side. It really behooves us not to be too identified with our sides. So anyway, back to dukkha. There's dukkha. And then the Buddha said, well, okay, you're getting that. You can get really depressed if you stop there. What about relief? And this is the beautiful discovery of the Buddha, one of many. What's causing the suffering? What's causing your suffering? And he proposed, test this. Well, it's actually not the conditions of the world, because the conditions of the world are always unstable like this. What's causing the dukkha is the sense of, it shouldn't be like this. I should be having more pleasure. I shouldn't be having this discomfort, this pain. And since the moment sucks, I want to become something different. I want to lean into the future and become something different. Now, that's a nice theory, perhaps, but it's not about, the intention of it is not, let's keep it as a nice philosophical idea. It's, let's turn toward the suffering, let's feel it deeply to know it deeply, and let's see if, in fact, there is not a process occurring which is, I don't like this, I don't like this, I don't like this. I want it to be like this, I want it to be like that, I want it to be like that. I want less pain, I want more pleasure. And by golly, since this moment isn't what I want, I'm going to become, when I get my degree, there's a really powerful one that I've lived through, which was, let's have a baby. I really want to have a baby. It was not easy for the mother of my children and I. We did not get pregnant easily. We lost the first pregnancy. We lost to rubella, German measles. Horrible experience. But then we didn't get pregnant easy. And then finally, he came, she came, hooray! And gosh, this is a lot. This is really wonderful. Let's take some more pictures. And then, well, it'll be really nice to get a night off. It's going to be, kindergarten. And kindergarten was remarkable. What a change. This blur. And then, and so it's gone. Oh, great. They graduated from college. Terrific. It's all fine now. Well, actually, it goes on and on. There's always wanting something to be a little different. And I think that's just the way it is in our lives. That none of these things that we think are going to do it actually do it. But there's a delusion that we have that it will. So let me not belabor this too much. If we're willing to spend the time, and I don't believe you can do this without a significant meditative practice. That's why I think that if we're going to move in the direction of happiness in our lives, it'll come through meditation. Not through achievement, not through consumption, not through more wealth. Not even through social change. It's good to have enough wealth. It's really important that we work towards social change and that we uplift the downtrodden. And without a deep inner life, we'll never be happy. So then, if we encounter dukkha, we have insight into the nature of dukkha, suffering, unsatisfactoriness, and then we have insight into the nature of tanha, thirst, quench. Then there comes the third noble truth, which is the truth of quenching, which is nibbana or nirvana. And it's not some other place. It's not an achievement that we get to have. It's just that when somehow or another, alchemically, mysteriously, we know, there's this knowing that happens, oh, this is how the suffering is being caused. It's by this attitude. It's by this self that wants something to be different. And then there's at least glimpses of, oh, the dukkha's gone. The outer world is exactly the same as it was before. But my experience of it is totally different. And then there's the Eightfold Path, which is a whole model of how do I go about having this experience? How do I go about making this the foundation of my life? And then, insights. The three perceptual distortions. The three profound misunderstandings. Are you like me in that way down inside, I really want something to be stable? I feel sad. I really want some place to call home. I had a fantasy that I had that in my first marriage, and after 17 years, she wanted a divorce. And the house that I thought was my house turned out to not be my house. In the end, it wasn't even her house. She left it behind. The Buddha said there are these three characteristics of reality, and one is anicca, which means not permanent. And there is nothing permanent. That's heavy. And to the degree that I live my life in denial of that, I'm in delusion. I'm also not very loving. When I take Jennifer, or any of you, when we're in a relationship, when I take anybody for granted, it's delusion. Because every relationship ends in separation or death. We get to visit one another. We meet on the train and we have a nice conversation, and maybe we become lovers or adversaries or something, but then we always disappear. And the insight of insight meditation, at the very simplest beginning level, I say this every time I do a guided meditation, please notice the beginning and the ending of each breath. It's not a light thing to do, it's a potent thing. And notice that thoughts think themselves into existence and then disappear. So the insight of insight meditation has that as one of the great insights. The second one has to do with dukkha and dissatisfaction. We're invited with mindfulness to examine our own life experience. And is it an experience of satisfaction? whew, I have everything I need and want? Or is it shot through often with, I'm missing something, or that person should be a little different, or my back hurts, or the political situation sucks, or and so to the degree that we are in denial of that, we are in denial of reality. And then we're tense. I mean, one of the really big ones that I know very well is blaming my unhappiness on someone else. I'm not happy because this person is like that. They're not satisfying my need or want or hope or whatever. And then, see, I'm running out of time. The third characteristic of existence, which is the one I always delight in realizing and talking about the most, way back a long time ago, almost 30 years ago, that first wife and I took a group of Lewis and Clark students to India for 5 months, if you can believe that. And we were pretending to be adults, and they were 21-year-olds, and it was wild. We were 27 and 28. But one of the things I did there at the Rajneesh ashram was something called an Enlightenment Intensive. And for 5 days, we would sit across from a partner, and the partner would say, "Tell me who you are." And you'd have 3 minutes to say, "This is who I am." And then you change off twice, and then one row would move, and then you'd have a new partner. We did that 10 or 12 hours a day. Tell me who you are. Tell me who you are. And it was heavy. Once you've told your story 5 times, 7 times, 12 times, it begins to become, it's clear. It's like, this is just the story. Who am I? Am I any of this? And insight meditation does the same thing. We sit down and we observe the self, liking and disliking. And what the Buddha taught, what the hypothesis is, you'll never find a self because it doesn't exist. Now, it doesn't mean you won't find something. And that something is utterly transformative, and that you'll discover that you're the unspeakable everything, or you'll discover that you were never born or never died. And we can say, well, that's an interesting theory, but these teachings say, well, actually, practice well, practice diligently, practice with a lot of love and compassion, and maybe you'll get at least glimpses of that. And in those glimpses, you can really relax, because you can stop trying to be somebody. I personally am very tired of Robert Beatty. He's tedious. He's opinionated. Unfortunately, I'm much less identified with him than I used to be, but still, there's so much in the way of moods and fears, and without the Dharma, I don't know what I would do. Well, I do. Yes, I would drink and smoke. That's what I would do. I'd find some way to alter reality, because the reality I'd be living in would be so unbearable. So, insight. There's mindfulness for stress management. There's mindfulness for psychological and emotional well-being, and it really makes a difference. And there's mindfulness, the mindfulness of vipassana, of seeing things as they really are, and of the sweet relief of realizing, and all words are inaccurate, but how about this for one? What if it's true that everything's already okay? We're going to live our lifetime and we'll die. We're going to have periods of great happiness and great sadness. We will have beloved friends who are with us for the whole journey and some who come and go on the way. We will have beloved friends who betray us or we'll betray them. And we'll discover that we're drawn to our meditation more and more because in that we get relief. Not just the relief of stress management or the relief of emotional modulation and wisdom, but actual wisdom. So that's what I wanted to share about insight, and with the conscious intention of maybe encouraging you to practice fully more, to make practice really central in your life. When you're upset, this my teacher Krishna in India said this to me one time. When you are angry, meditate. When you are happy, meditate. When you're feeling very frightened and lonely, meditate. When you're feeling very spacious and magnanimous, meditate. And learn that it all comes and goes. Well, there. I wish we had time for questions and comments, and I too to echo what Jim said. I look forward to those of you that are here in Portland. I do look forward to being able to be together in the center together. At a minimum, it will be 2.5 months from now. If they would give us the damn permit tomorrow, we could be into the center in 2.5 months. Because there's a 62-day building period. And I sure hope we get to start building soon. Construction materials have gone completely out of control in price. A sheet of plywood that cost $40 a month and a half ago is now $85. There's an inflation in building supplies, which is just... So, we'll see. And on the way there, why not suffer less, huh? So thank you, dear friends. I appreciate your presence here. It's a privilege to be able to speak about the Dharma, and I hope it's useful. I hope it's useful. Molly is here. I'm glad I spotted you, Molly. Would you like to lead us in the song? I see. Wow. So we'll sing the song, the May All Beings Be Happy, but let's all have our auto translators on. What do we mean by happy? Perhaps we mean the happy of deep insight. And I guess one other thread I did not adequately portray, which is the more insight we have into the three characteristics of existence, the more loving we become and the more kind. The more we understand dukkha, the more we know everybody's suffering lots of dukkha. So how can we not love each other? All right, Molly, where are you here? I lost you. Oh, there you are. Wave your hand, that's good. So I'm going to highlight you, replace spotlight, and please lead us when you're... Oh, where'd you go?
There you are.
Did it work?
Yes.
You're highlighted?
I think so.
Oh, okay. I don't see it. Great. That's good. All right. Whenever you're ready.
May all
Beings be happy.
May
All beings be happy. May all beings be happy. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Hey, Molly, there's a cat beside you.
Yay, Molly, for the kitty cat!
Who's the cat? What's the cat's name?
Zoe.
I see.
So
Thank you for sharing, Molly.
We heard you on Friday, Tamara, on the
Yeah,
YouTube
Molly.
replay.
Oh, thank you. Bless you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you, dear Molly. Hi, Kitty Bear.
Well, dear friends, please have a fine, mindful, loving day, and I will look forward to seeing you tomorrow at 7 for those of you that do the weekday meetings. Happy journeys.
Thank you, Robert.
Bye.
I get to plant beans and edamame today.
we'll be at your house for dinner tonight.
All right, well, not for edamame or beans, I hope.
Oh, okay, next month.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.
Have a nice day, Robert.